Hey guys, welcome episode, and I've got a seasoned entrepreneur for you for the show today, Damion Lupo. He's launched and grown companies through seven figures. He's been in the business for 25 years. He's no stranger to podcasting or to the show. So I'm really happy to have him on. So Damion, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Christopher.
Yeah, so I know your story and kind of set the stage and talk about your experience and your journey, and we'll dive right into your talking points.
Well, I appreciate that. The story is something that started probably 35 years ago when I started my first business at 11 up in Alaska. My parents told me we were broke, didn't have any money, and couldn't buy us video games, or me. My sisters didn't care, but I wanted to buy some video games. So I started a business to buy and sell Nintendo games. That way I could play the games. And that was the first iteration of a business where I saw a problem in the market. The market happened to be me. And I said, well, I want to fix this and solve the problem, and ended up making a bunch of money doing it. And I played all the games I wanted to play. And that was the beginning where I couldn't help myself. As an entrepreneur, if there's something in your blood where you see some problem and you start thinking, "Ooh, I could do that better," and you start imagining, there is an entrepreneur blood type that's flowing through your veins. And that kept going. I got thrown out of college about 10 years later because I started a bookstore on campus that put the other bookstore out of business. And they got really irritated because they wanted that bookstore to sell pencils and paper all semester. But I took all the business, paid for school, and got thrown out. And I realized probably then that I'm just not meant to follow a traditional role. And so I went out there and went into the wild, if you will, and started doing other stuff, insurance agencies, a lot of real estate. And today it's over 70 companies that I've started and built. Many of them, just so we're really clear, many of them didn't go anywhere. They were just sort of an exercise in futility, or just an opportunity for me to learn something that would lead to the next thing, and ultimately to today, where I'm helping to build FrameTech, which is now worth $500 million. And 2 years ago, it was a napkin.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And, there's a lot of individuals. I know there was one guest right before you, and she was saying, she was never meant to this kind of 9 to 5 and, listening to a boss and, playing politics. So talk about what FrameTech is and its innovative approach to construction and what impact it's had.
Absolutely. So what's funny is FrameTech is this disruptive entity that's disrupting the construction industry, and everybody looks at it at this point as an overnight success story because it literally started off on a napkin 2.5 years ago at a meeting over lunch. And the operators and my team and I came together, and we brought the capital and some operational experience in, and we said, we all love this idea. Let's make this happen. And the idea behind FrameTech is that construction, well, there's two things. One, there's a housing crisis in America. We're about 5 to 7 million units behind. Like, we need that many just to catch up, and we're going backwards about 600,000 units a year. And the framing industry is the biggest bottleneck in construction of houses and apartments, and nobody wants to frame. And it's also not really been changing the last change was probably 1954 with the nail gun. So there's not much innovation in the space. And our partners that have been in the truss manufacturing business for the last 50 years, since before I was born, had been operating and seeing all this opportunity. He's an entrepreneur. His name's Marvin. And he's like, I got this idea, but it's going to cost $40 million to do. And what he's done is and what we've built is a system that speeds up the process of framing by about 4 times. So if it takes 2 months for an average house to be framed in the whole process, we do it in 2 weeks. And not only does it do it faster, but because all of the floors, the walls, the trusses are done in a manufacturing plant, it's done 10 times better in terms of the quality control. Everything is exact and precise. And then one of the coolest things that nobody's been able to do, and nobody's really cared to do, was the waste. Every time you look at a house that's under construction or an apartment, there's all these dumpsters full of trees. Not only is that bad for the environment, but imagine how much money is being wasted with all these trees that are thrown away. This system that's patented, our process is patented, removes the waste down to about 1% of what it used to be. So now it's like a trash can in a kitchen full of sawdust instead of a dumpster, a 40-yard dumpster full of wood. So we're able to, this is not a little change or like a 3 or 5% change. This is a 10x disruption. And the whole country's, like, all of the big builders, they're all paying attention. We know they're watching. And they should be, because this is the future of framing. And quite frankly, I think it's going to be the future of business in a lot of ways, because of how we're building our culture. And that's one of the things that I'm most excited about: how the people get served, how the community gets served, and everybody wins except the old way of thinking. That one gets crushed.
I always perk up when I hear, new startups and companies that are challenging the way things are done. And, real estate in the States is really, it's kind of very slow and inefficient, very wasteful. And looks like FrameTech's reduce time waste. And talk about, your commitment to environmental responsibility. And you talked about eco-friendly and building a community, how that makes FrameTech strategically positioned compared to existing legacy companies.
Well, right off the bat, when you remove all of this waste and when you do things inside of a plant, you help the environment by not cutting down unbelievable amounts of trees and forests that are not necessary. So that one saves all these trees to be used more efficiently. It removes a ton of the carbon footprint with all of the diesel to throw away the trees to the dumpsters and moving people back and forth. It saves all this time and energy. So ultimately, projects are done faster. So these communities are served better because they have more housing. People say, well, the housing is so expensive. And I'm like, yeah, that's partly because we have a supply problem. When you increase supply and demand stays the same, you're going to reduce prices. So this actually works better for everybody. And not to mention, the plant is LEED either gold or platinum. We're not sure which one it's going to land at. It's almost entirely run based on solar. So we're almost energy neutral. And like all these things are compounding on themselves. Like one of the cool things that we're doing in terms of serving the community. And when we think about the environment, I look at the environment as both external and internal. Like I look at our people's internal environment in their bodies as part of the environmental impact. And part of what we're doing is we on our facility, we have not only a cafeteria, but a childcare center that's being built and a wellness facility that's staffed with doctors and people that keep our people healthy, not just giving them drugs every time they get a cold. So we're taking care of people and looking at their pain points and their problems. And so in terms of the environmental impact, it's probably not the answer you were thinking about when you asked that question, but we're looking at the whole environment, internal, external, and that is part of the impact on business in general that I think is going to be really profound in America going forward.
Another question that comes to my mind is we'll talk about what kind of housing and construction you're talking about, and how does FrameTech fit into the picture? Because I know, for example, there's a neighborhood in Texas that's starting to do a 3D printing, and so how does FrameTech fit within this architecture where homes are going to be almost very cheaper, faster, more cost effective, etc.?
It's a great question. And it actually, there's a big question about competition and how this fits in with the whole ecosystem. And I love the question because when I look at a company like that, I go, this is awesome. We've got innovators that are looking for ways to solve. We've got modular construction. We've got tiny houses. So I saw that the exact neighborhood you're talking about out in Texas. And it's cool because that's going to be a fit for a bunch of people. Right now, over 90% of the housing, whether it's tract homes or site built or apartments, are done with traditional wood. It's because it's renewable. It's relatively inexpensive relative to a lot of other things like metal. And so we're still going to see for decades to come, most construction being wood. What we know is that we need more building. And so whether we have 3D or whether we have tiny houses or whatever these things are, we need all of them. And one of the things that somebody brought up on social media, they were talking about this community. They said, this is great as long as you never need to remodel. And that's kind of one of the things about a 3D printed house, because it's done in a really cool way, but you're not going to change it really. Like changing a 3D printed house that's done with polymers and concrete, that's not something that's going to be remodeled, and not very easily. It's going to be very difficult. So that was one of the things that is very different. But I love it. I hope that they succeed wildly and that they spread these things. Just like if sometimes people say, well, what if somebody builds another plant? Because we have hundreds of millions of dollars of investor money in this project. And one of the concerns investors have is, well, what if somebody rips this off or they do something next door? And my response is, if you had 100 of these plants go online today in America, you still wouldn't solve the problem. I look forward to having everybody that's out there trying to help solve this problem. So it's very cooperative. Like we have our stuff patented, our process, but I'm not worried about somebody trying to come in and rip it off. I can tell you firsthand, it is incredibly hard, and Elon would say the same thing, to manufacture something in a sophisticated, automated, we're the most automated plant in North America. So to do that, to get to that level, it is very, very hard. You don't just say, I'm going to do this because I like the idea and I think I can do it. It's really, really challenging. So I'm all in favor, and I cheer them on. When I see people doing stuff like that, I don't go, oh, darn, we've got a competitor. I'm like, awesome. They're helping to solve this big problem we're all working on.
Yeah, and a follow-up question to you is because you talked about competition, and I have a good friend from college. He started a startup in the competing with the legacy financial, and he has the same viewpoint as you. Is like, awesome, we can all come together and kind of solve the payments problem and all the waste and the inefficiency. What sort of blocks or barriers have you had? Because, like, for example, Airbnb, they had like the hotel industry and governments, and you had Uber and Lyft, like the taxi industry. So are you facing any sort of that type of opposition?
Well, here's one of the interesting things when we, I mean, because there's always opposition. Somebody doesn't want you to win. It's either somebody that's already in place that doesn't want to lose business, or it's somebody that just they don't want to see growth. One of the interesting things about our philosophy, where we go and where our sites are, we have 2 in Arizona, and we've got a number of them spread out in Texas and North Carolina and Tennessee that are coming online. We look at areas that are very pro-business, that are saying we want to support you. So, for example, we're not going to ever build in California. There's a lot of California I love, but I don't know any place there that will actually say, yay, let's support you. It would take us 3 times as long to build something if we could get it through. Where we're at, when we had regulations and red tape that would normally take 6 weeks, it would take us 2 days, because the mayor and the political structure is so excited about what we're doing. Because, one, we're creating real jobs, not just another Starbucks that's a service job, but these are core jobs. Each plant has a couple hundred core jobs, and that results in about 1,000 to 2,000 net jobs that get created. So these environments, especially rural areas, a lot of people want to live in rural areas, but a lot of the jobs that they used to have there aren't there anymore. They're going into in dense cities where a lot of people just don't want to live. Well, that's one of the cool things. When we go into these rural areas, there's a lot of people, and they're talented, and they're super grateful about being a part of it. So we get a lot of tailwinds, a lot of support. And so our model is specifically to be in places that are not as dense, that there aren't these type of opportunities, and people are flocking. They're literally coming to us and saying, I want to be a part of the winning team. You're the winning team. And that feels really good. So the barriers are primarily political, and these areas, these cities, but they're, the competition. One of the things that's going to happen, and we've noticed it a little bit. There's skeptics in the environment where they're saying there's no way you can do what you're doing, and they always say that. Like, they said that to Elon. There's no way you can do and he was crazy until he did it. And so as our plant is being tested and we come online in the fall of 24, all of a sudden the skeptics are going to be quiet. They're going to be muted, because the proof is in the pudding. And that's probably the biggest issue that is like looming. But the reality, you always have people that are trying to tear down the other successful people to keep them at their same level. And we're too busy building it, so we don't really give a crap.
Yeah, spoken like a true entrepreneur. And every time I look at American business, the government's always there to have their hand in it, or kind of extract something, or destroy it, or control it. For the entrepreneurs out there, it's not for the faint of heart. You're going to go through ups and downs. And so what advice can you offer for those who are struggling, or just start, their startup, kind of hit a roadblock, they got to solve these problems? What advice do you have for them?
So I have my favorite creature on earth, at least my most interesting, exciting animal. You've probably seen the video on YouTube of the honey badger. And I love this thing. The video's been seen by like 20 billion people or something. And it's because this animal represents fearlessness, decisiveness, committed, and resiliency. And that's what an entrepreneur, anybody that's starting, whether it's your first thing or your 15th thing, you have to have those elements to you. And as much as you're going to become obsessed about the thing, one thing that I will tell you, that you can't be obsessed about 5 things at once. Like, you've got to go all in. We just had the Olympics. There was no person that was swimming, playing basketball, running track, and doing some other thing. They pick one thing, and then they do that like 10 hours a day for 10 years. And there's 25,000 hours of the training. It's the same thing with being an entrepreneur. Pick whatever it is. I think a lot of people will get wound up about picking the right thing, and that's the wrong answer. The right answer is go pick something and then do it. And if it doesn't work, which very likely it won't, because there's too many things you need to learn, you do learn, and then you go to the next one. These 70 businesses that preceded FrameTech, I've messed up more things than I can count. Like I've written books about all the things I messed up, the millions of dollars that I've lost, and that was part of the process. And most people have, unfortunately, they read Tim Ferriss's book, which I love, The 4 Hour Work Week. But everybody thinks you can build something in 4 hours and there's no pain. And I would say that the entrepreneur gets really used to pain, and it's like Joe Rogan gets in his cold plunge, and I have one sitting next to where I'm sitting right now. He does that every day, and he's crazy. I love Joe Rogan, but he's crazy. 37 degrees. He does the hard thing, the painful thing to start every day, because everything after that gets easier. And I love that philosophy. As an entrepreneur, find something that's painful and put it into your rhythm to start your day. And then when you get your teeth kicked in and people are yelling at you and people are quitting and all this other stuff and people are suing you, and you're like, oh, well, I already froze everything off at 6 a.m. today. So how hard could it be? And that's the approach you have to have. If you want it to be warm and cozy, you're not in the right thing. I mean, if you want it warm and cozy, go work for the government, because then you get paid whether you do anything or what. It doesn't matter. Entrepreneurs are willing to go through unbelievable amounts of pain for unbelievable amounts of time. And they get to a place where they're almost numb to it. It's like, yeah, this is part of the experience. Hit me again. I don't care, because my mission is more important. The purpose, why I'm here, is why I'm doing this. It's not so I can go make some money. That's one of those tricks too. If you think it's about the money, if you're like, well, I want to make $1 billion, wrong. Go impact 1 billion people. FrameTech is going to impact hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people over the next decade. And so what happens when you impact that many people? You end up creating things that are worth billions of dollars. The billions of dollars is not the focus. The impact is, and that's what every entrepreneur should be thinking about. What's the impact? How do I make it bigger and more meaningful?
Yeah, you and me, we share similar sentiments to government and bureaucracy and just kind of legacy. How can people find you and find out the work that you're doing, and check out your social media, etc.?
The best place to find me is FrameTech online, frametech.com. You can see what we're doing. There's videos of the cool stuff, and I share a lot of that stuff on LinkedIn, and you can ping me personally on LinkedIn. I think what's cool is if you go to FrameTech, no matter whether you're like, that's cool, or I want to invest, what I think you're going to learn is what you're going to see is a model for business. You're going to see a model for not just construction, but for how to operate and what it's like when something is so passion focused and purpose focused. And so it gives everybody a model for whatever they're going to do. And so I've found that it's really useful, no matter whatever you're doing, just seeing what maybe you could do that's more inspiring. And we need people to be more inspiring and more mission and more purpose focused than ever before. And so hopefully this will give everybody a little bit of that. And I'd love to hear from people that see it. And I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation and love your energy and your passion, your enthusiasm, spoken like a true entrepreneur. You've been through it all. For the audience, be sure to give Damion socials a like and follow. Check out FrameTech, see what they're doing. And thanks so much for coming on.